Alright guys, let's get ready to bleed this system. Okay, what we've done right now is we turn the steering wheel all the way to the full left position. Left it there. Now I'm coming back and I'm filling up this here reservoir. Just get it between the min and the max. You know, it's going to go down anyway. Now the belt is off on the pump. Okay, go ahead and turn it slowly to the right. Now while she's doing that, there's air bubbles coming back up through here. Now you want to do this slow. You don't want to sit there and whip the wheel back and forth as fast as you can. And when you get it all the way to the right, then go back and go the other way. Bubbles are still coming out. You want to continue this process until you don't see any more bubbles coming up through the reservoir. Alright, there's a few more bubbles popped up. What we're doing is when we see these bubbles, we're getting the air out. And you want to get this air out before you crank the engine up. First thing you want to do is you start running this here pump, and then this here has got air in it. A lot of times you see crank up the engine, go back and forth with the steering wheel, purge the air out. Well, guess what? While this air is in there and you're running that air pump, you got metal to metal clearance inside this pump. Basically, you got a very, very tight clearance in there. And it's not going to take long for you just to damage that pump in just in a few minutes of you trying to purge this air. So what's the trick? Get all the air out before you crank it up. So that's what we're doing. And we still got bubbles coming out. Now if you see this here level drops down and you see it going on down in there, then start, put some more fluid in it. Try to keep it in between the min and the max. And as the air bubbles comes in there, then the fluid's going to actually drop too, because the air bubbles is taking up space inside the lines and in the rack and the pinion and the power steering pump and all that. So it's dropping down. It's probably dropped, I say 3/4 of an inch. Okay. Okay, hold it right there for just a second. Alright, it's getting a little bit low. Here's another thing. Volkswagen recommends this type of fluid. Let me get you guys a little bit of light so you can see it. Alright. SCHF 11S. This is for 2001 Volkswagen, also for Audi and previous years. I believe in 2005 it changed it over to a CHF. That's a 202. These two fluids are compatible with each other. So check your owner's manual. Be sure to put in there what the manufacturer recommends. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to put in some more fluid. It's going to drop down here. It's just getting some more in there. Okay. Now we're going to continue the process, taking the steering wheel back and forth. Again, you want to do this slowly. The idea is not to see how fast you can go from one side to the other with the steering wheel. When you move it slowly like this, it actually releases the air bubbles out a lot better. Okay? And again, when you get to one side, just go back to the other side. Now, okay, that was about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There was 12. There's 12 big air bubbles popped up. Continue the process until you don't see these air bubbles. Okay? Air bubbles are still coming. Still popping up. Now the capacity on this whole entire system is from 0.7 to 0.9 liters. The can that I showed you earlier is a 1 liter can. So when we get this can just about emptied, then we know that we're pretty much getting full, or it should be full. and the level is continually going down. Okay. Try to keep it off from the bottom of the reservoir, so when you see it's getting too low, just go ahead back and fill some more in there. Now while you're doing this process here, you'll be going back, you'll find that you may go back several times on the steering wheel. You won't see any air bubbles, but don't stop. Keep doing it. Keep doing it a few times, and you'll be surprised it'll start the bubbling again. Just a while ago, we probably went back about 5 or 6 times on the steering wheel from lock to lock, no bubbles. So I told her to keep going, and on about the 3rd time after that, there the bubbles start coming again. It takes time for the fluid to get itself worked down into all these here passageways during the piston, in the piston on the rack and pinion. It's got to fill all these crevices, so it's going to take time to get itself worked down in there. So just continue. It takes a little patience. You might sit here for maybe 15-20 minutes. Just going back and forth with the steering wheel. And also, just make sure that you keep your reservoir filled up. Don't let it get down too low there. Now, after you go back and forth a few times and you're quite satisfied that you don't see any more bubbles popping up, and you're going back and forth, and everything looks good, okay? Now what you want to do is get your steering wheel, say, in the center. Alright, now once you get your steering wheel in the center, come down here to the pulley on your power steering pump. What you want to do, turn that by hand, clockwise, same direction as the engine runs. Now what you're going to do there is you're going to be moving fluid. Try to get you guys some light here. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and turn this here pulley by hand. You don't have to turn this thing as fast as you can. Just go around maybe about 1 revolution per second. That's all you want to do. Go around about 10, 15, 20 times. Nothing critical here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to move the fluid through, pushing it on down through the lines here. Trying to maybe displace some of these air bubbles. Now once you do this a few times, then you want to come back up, and then you want to go and you want to check your reservoir. Okay. Yeah, and it did drop down a little bit. Okay, and actually the bubbles is bubbling up right now. We're not even turning the steering wheel. It's bubbling. Alright, so go ahead and turn the steering wheel again. Back and forth. Okay, steering wheel going back and forth, back and forth. Right at the very moment here, I don't see any more air bubbles popping up. You want to do that, continue doing this a few times until you're sure that you don't want to see any more air bubbles coming up. Okay, now put it all the way to the left position. Okay, now the steering wheel, now I don't see any more air bubbles. Steering wheel is all the way to the left position. Now I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to turn this here pulley clockwise. Now when I did that, I can see some bubbles. They're popping up. Okay. Alright, now take the steering wheel all the way back to the right. Hold it in there. Just take it to the lock position. Just let it go. Just take it to the right. Okay. Now while we got it over in the right position, I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to turn the pulley again. Now while you're doing this, I can hear the air bubbles, burping up to the top inside the reservoir. So if you can hear these air bubbles while you're turning it, continue turning the pulley. Okay, I didn't hear any more bubbles. Okay, I still got a few bubbles popping up, and I've stopped turning the pulley. Okay, and my level has dropped down a little bit. So I'm going to put in a little bit more. Okay. Okay, guys, the key to this job is patience. you know. Like I said, get as much air out as you can before you crank this engine up. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to turn the steering wheel back and forth again. Okay guys, now we're going to continue this process, what I just described to you, and I'm going to continue it until I don't see any air bubbles. So we'll catch you in the next shot here. All right. You're going to get to the point where you're not going to see any more air bubbles, okay? So what you want to do at that point is go ahead and get your belt back onto your power steering pump pulley. Go back to the previous video. You can see where I took the bolt here, put it on the tensioner. So go ahead and take the tensioner bolt out. Go back and put your spark plugs in. You notice I don't have the inspection cover on. Make sure that we got enough fluid. In fact, I need to add a little bit. Now, when you crank the vehicle up, you can probably notice that the oil level is going to drop. That's normal. But you don't want it to drop too far. So if you see it's dropping and just going right on down, just turn the engine off. And that's what we're going to do right at this point now. Okay, go ahead and crank it up. Alright, now start turning the wheel back and forth. Okay, in my case it dropped down just a little bit, but not much. Now, when you first heard the pump, you could hear it was whining, a little moaning sound. That's going to be typical too. There's still a little bit of air in the system because you cannot get absolutely every bit of it out. Our main objective in the beginning was to get as much out before we cranked it up. And now what we're doing now is we're getting the final amount of air out by the pump running, and we're turning the steering wheel from the lock position left to right. We're still doing that fairly slowly. Okay, I can see bubbles coming up. Everything is looking really good. Okay. Steering wheel is still going back and forth. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more fluid to it. As I said, this is normal. It's going to drop down just a little. You want to just keep going back and forth with that steering wheel. Even if you don't see any bubble, still continue doing that process. I like to do this, continue this until the engine is warmed up. I might be a little bit anal, maybe overkill, but that's just the way I've been doing it for years. And never had a problem as far as in, the pump gets damaged because it's got air still in the system. Everything is looking good up here on the top side. I still see just tiny little air bubbles, okay? But no big air bubbles coming up like it was initially before we started the engine. Okay? So that's looking good. So while the steering wheel is being turned back and forth, I'm going to take a look underneath the car, check the leaks and that kind of stuff. Okay, I got through checking for leaks around the pump. Everything looks great. The pump right at this point is nice and quiet. Right now I don't see any bubbles at all. Crystal clear, no burping, no chirping, everything looks good. No air bubbles, everything looks good in here in the reservoir. Alright, I'm going to continue to let this engine warm up. We're going to continue this process of moving this here steering wheel back and forth until I feel pretty comfortable and satisfied that this here air is completely out of this system. Hope you guys liked the video. Appreciate you watching, and we'll be signing off. You guys take care.